I'll challenge your listeners, because I challenge people when I talk to them about this, is like, are you actually taking advantage of the lifestyle that you got into business for in the first place?
Well, I mean, so you prioritize on like the system and processes. That's what you say your strongest point is. What are some of those systems that you've put in place to get to where you are now? And what are you seeing that you can change to get to these new locations?
Yeah. So for us, it's a couple things. Number one is software. Our whole company is digital. It's been that way since very early on. Even in our last company, we use Dropbox for all of our files. So when you come into our office, there's no filing cabinets anywhere. You're not going to find a bunch of paperwork all over the place. Everything is digital. Everything gets scanned, put into our digital filing system, and it works that way. So it all has a process and a system that it comes in like the filing cabinet, goes to the departments it needs to, goes to finance, ends up in the customer's folder, just as it would in the real world.
Yeah.
And that allows us to be anywhere. I can be, halfway across the world, and I can look up anything I want. I can pull up a receipt. I can look at a contract, things of that nature. The second part to that is software. So we use a project management software. We have a CRM that allows us, again, to be anywhere, to do anything from anywhere. When we traveled a lot as missionaries before with our last business, I was out of country and I was running the back end of the business. So I had to say, how can I do these things without being present? What can I put in place with my employees, with him, to be able to do those things from anywhere? So really thinking about your business from like the aspect of, like, if I couldn't be physically in the office, how am I going to get that information? How am I going to do that? Which is kind of weird with construction, because I call it the last digital dinosaur. So many people are still pen and paper, and it's even hard when we hire people. We have to ask them, like, hey, how are you in technology? Like, what kind of
smartphone?
Right? No, seriously. Like, what kind of phone are you using?
Yeah, I get a lot of guys with those throwaways still. And I'm like, man, I gotta send you pictures. Like, I don't have enough data for that.
Yeah, 100%. Like, a project manager is coming in, and I'm like, hey, you're going to be in a project management software, and they're like, no, I prefer pen and paper. And we're like, no, not anymore. Give me your pen and paper. You can't use it. You can have an iPad, you can have a Remarkable, but you've got to be digital. So that's a huge way that we're able to expand. We're able to create the team that we have. The second way is that I make people document their jobs. So over the last 6 years inside of what we do, every time I hire someone and I train them, I make them document that training process. Every time we add a new position, they document that. Everything that they're going to do in that position, they make flow charts. They make flow charts of how to use softwares and systems and process. So that way, if something happens, if that person doesn't work out, guess what?
There's a handbook for them.
There's a handbook for that position.
Essentially, Chris, you can sit down and teach someone how to do whatever job is you hired them for, right?
For sure.
But the next time you have to hire that position, you're gonna have to reteach someone. So instead of doing that, Amy has created this, wonderful scenario where she just said, I'm going to teach you, you're going to document it. You're going to be my scribe through this process.
Yeah.
Now we have a process, right?
Smart. That's awesome.
And it allows them to learn in different ways, right? They're learning hands-on, they're learning reading, writing it, all of that. And then they have to prove the system. So once they've done that, then I say, okay, let's say it's, entering a new contract. Okay, here's the contract. Run through your system. Where do you get stuck?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, I got stuck here. Yeah, because you're missing this piece. Oh, shoot, I forgot that. And then what happens when I hire the next person for that position? They go through it and they edit it for any changes, because software changes, verbiage changes.
Yeah.
They edit it for any changes and we update it. It also allows us to be duplicatable, right? So now if I go into another location, I take those same systems and processes and they do it. And my person at location A and my person at location B, they're going to do things the same. So that way, if A ever has to cover for B or whatever it may be, they can do it because it's the same system.
That's awesome, man.
And I think people get bogged down with systems and processes like it's just a big complicated thing, right? It literally boils down to just at its basic core, it's just documenting something so that someone else can come back and understand it and do it, right? So something simple. As we've been scaling the business, we're having to add a lot of cell phones, right? Well, we constantly have people, well, how do I set up my email on my cell phone? need a system for that, right?
Yeah.
It's literally just documenting, like, these are the steps to set up your email on your phone, like as basic as it can be. Meetings, right? Meetings need to have a system, right? Some companies will meeting you to death, right? But is there actual system for your meeting? So we actually have a structure. This is how our meetings run. The first thing we do is this. The second thing we do is this. The third thing we do is this. And everybody has the same meeting. So your team is looking for consistency, and that's the most duplicatable thing, which is the most scalable thing.
For sure.
You know, so I think Hermosi says, simple scales, fancy fails, right?
Absolutely.
And so, like, how do you set up your email on your phone? Like, that's a simple system that most companies should have. Now, are there more complicated things? Sure.
Yeah.
But like, essentially,
If you're doing it for those small
Yeah.
basic tasks,
Yeah.
you're going to get it for the bigger tasks,
Right,
and then eventually
right.
build a better system for it. Yeah.
And I'll have people ask me, they're like, oh, so what do you have it in? Do you have some big learning management software system you're using or this or that? There's a bunch of different softwares. And I'm like, no, I have it in Word and Excel.
Yeah.
Like
We will
that,
get
because
there. We
we'll
will
get
get
there.
there,
Like
but
the
yeah.
next evolution is to take all of that and have it in a great, grandiose learning management system. But you don't need to be. You just need to start somewhere. And Word and Excel is a great place to start.
Absolutely.
So
about
it's just a matter of
progress,
just
not
having it.
Corporate videos, you don't need all that.
No, you
Just
don't need a
send them
video
an email
series.
saying, hey, welcome aboard. This is
Yeah.
how you get into your email. Here's your password.
Those are
And
nice.
Yeah.
I think the main point is like starting. Just
Start.
go ahead and start.
Right.
Get it
Yes.
done. Because when I first started, I looked at system and processes like a dinosaur, like you said. Like, holy smokes, like this has got to be complicated. Like I got to be super detailed and granular on everything I do. And then I was like, finally, I just like had an epiphany. I was like, it just needs to be simple.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be perfect.
How do you answer?
No.
Just start it, and then you can make tweaks as you go.
Version 1
Version.
is going to beat version none.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right? So-
Absolutely.
Well, and you're right, because that does lack. One thing when I first started doing contract work, I thought like, man, I could just make a business on showing these old heads how to like manage their business, or just manage it for them and just
Right.
make money off.
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, this is kind of crazy, because like all these guys are using pen and paper, and
They do.
and like they lose half of it. They're not getting estimates back for 3 weeks, and it's like, and I've fallen into that, and I've seen why that happens as a business. But then, like, you change it. How can I fix it? How can I do better than that? Or that contractor's not showing up. How do we make sure we show up? So it's kind of cool to see that, like, how you
Yeah.
can make those changes.
Right,
And,
right.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's amazing to see that, like, how construction work is one of the biggest industries, but it is
Yeah.
so far
It's the
behind.
dinosaur.
Because
Right.
a tradesperson, and we've talked about this before, is a tradesperson really has difficulty stepping outside of that and becoming a business person. Like
Right,
you
Yeah.
said.
right,
And
exactly.
that's the biggest thing. Most tradesmen start jobs for themselves,
Right.
by
Yeah.
creating a business.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
They just created a job.
Yeah, they just created a job, and now they're just burning their tires. I can't take a day off. I can't. Nothing gets done if I'm not there.
Right.
And I just saw a guy now in town recently who is like the flooring guru, who could literally expand to be one of the biggest companies around, but he can't, because he's got to be there himself. He
Yeah.
had some issues with a girl or whatever, and now he's kind of fallen off, and it's like sad, because I want to reach out and be like, man, no, let's how. You should be able to have an issue with your girl and fall off, and your business should still be making money while that
Right.
happens.
Yeah.
So how can we make that happen?
Yeah, and it is true. They create a job, and it's actually worse than the job they came from.
Yeah.
A lot of contractors are like, my boss stinks. Like they're this, that, whatever. I'm gonna go out on my own. It'll be so much better. And they're like, oh, holy
Then hits
crap!
the
Like
24/7
I just
schedule.
doubled my
Yeah.
hours
Yeah.
that I was
And lessened
working.
my pay.
People are calling
And
in
lessen my
during dinner
pay, yeah.
time.
And now I have to
Yeah.
pay for all my tools and all this
Right.
stuff. It's like,
Yeah.
well, good choice.
Yeah,
To speak to that, I think that the biggest thing, if I were to point to kind of like one thing that really freed me up, or started to free me up from all the responsibility inside of my business, was having a scorecard. We call it a scorecard. So the most important numbers in the business, and having someone else own them, right? So my head of operations he owns the revenue number that he brings in. My head of sales owns his number. My head of marketing leads. So having a scorecard was huge for me, because I used to just take the burden of making sure I knew all of those things.
Yeah.
And now I have other people who I trust. They are A players inside of my organization. They own a number, so they're accountable to it. And so I think that the scorecard was probably the biggest thing for me, as an owner. Allowed me to step out of the business and let someone else take responsibility for their role inside of the business. So
Is that their 90.io? Is that what you started with?
yeah, so that's the software. We use 90.io to document all
on
of that. Yep. So all
So
that
you're not,
stuff's
like,
in there.
that's like the third person on this podcast that said the same exact
I'm using
thing.
90.io now.
Yeah.
Fourth
Yeah.
person. So
Yep. So essentially just that dashboard is, once a week I go in and I review all the numbers with my team. we're on track, we're off track. If we're off track, how do we course correct and get back on track so we can hit our target for the year? So
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
I think that's one thing that's tough in any business is like you don't want to give people the right to run your company because you don't think they're going to do it like you. But as long as you hold them accountable and give them that opportunity, they usually will shine. I
Right.
mean, I learned I was running my business day to day, and then when I moved away, it did better, and I was more profitable and less headaches and less callbacks. And it was like, wait a second,
you gave people the space to
Yeah.
actually
I saw micromanaging.
succeed. Yeah.
That's tough as an entrepreneur though,
Yeah.
is
It
to give up that relinquish that control. It took me a while to like really like
was
start delegating.
Terrible, yeah.
Yeah.
But once I did, it's like, holy smokes, it's a
Yeah.
whole new world.
It
like,
is, yeah. And I
Yeah.
think people don't realize that because you're kind of just knocking your brain. And I used to have problems just not having it on paper, hiring somebody and being like, I'm trying to get it out of my head and tell you, but I'd rather
Right.
just solve that problem.
Right.
because
It's
Quicker. It's quicker if I just solve
I
it
don't
than
want
try to tell
like,
you how.
hey, this is how you solve the problem.
Yeah.
But you kind of have to do that because now eventually, if that problem comes back,
Yeah.
through the first admin, she's wrote this handbook like
Yeah.
you're talking about to the third admin that doesn't have that problem anymore.
Yeah.
I don't have that problem.
Right,
anymore.
right.
Yeah.
So that is one big
Something
thing.
I started doing with my guys as I started to give them some responsibility, because part of us wants to solve the problem, right? That hero in us wants to be the guy that everybody's got to come to and ask. But I started asking my guys when they would come to me and say, hey, what do you think about this? I'd ask them, well, what do you think? Like, what do you think the solution is? Like, give me, just guess. Like, what's one or two things that how would you handle this? And then let them figure it out rather than me just always being that. It took a while to get into that discipline of not just giving them the answer.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, because sometimes it's just
Yeah.
easier to fix the problem and
Right.
move on. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Short term.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or long term.
Yeah,
Long term,
Right,
you
long
want
term.
you don't want to have to be there to answer
Yeah.
all the problems, or
You're
else.
on your phone on Monday morning
Yeah.
and the phone's already dead at
Yeah,
9:30.
I was listening to
You know a guy, right?
little
Deal with it.
Instagram reel probably a month ago. It was, Leela Hormozy, I think it's her name, right?
Lila, yeah.
Lila. And she said that at the end of the day, the owner of the company gets 3 questions from sales, three questions from each department, and then that's the questions that he's going to answer for the next morning. So I've kind of implemented that into my guys. So like if they call me during the day, 9 times out of 10 I probably won't answer unless they text me, hey, it's 911. And then so now the way we operate is if they have any questions, they get 3 in each department. So sales and operations, they can ask me in the email, and then by the next morning I'll answer them.
That's pretty smart. At least they know where they
Yeah.
stand.
Yeah.
Like,
And they makes them pick out like the tough questions.
Yeah.
So like they're not asking the frivolous questions because you only get 3.
Right.
And we're sticking to it.
or they try to figure the one out.
Yeah.
Just,
And a lot of times by the end of the day, they've solved their problem themselves.
Right.
That-
Yeah.
So I've found this to be the case, right? Email is like the vein of my existence. I just can't stand email. If you ignore most emails, they solve them. They solve their problem themselves. I promise you. Like the reality
the
is, like
IRS one.
most things someone will find a solution if you just ignore it,
Yeah.
right? So I'm not saying you should ignore everything, but
No, but it's tough though, because like as a business owner, you really do like you can only answer every question from all the clients, all the employees that you have. My phone blows up. I eventually got 2 phones, and even now my personal phone still blows up as much. And I'm like, and I tell people now, just being honest with them, if you're calling my personal phone, just know it'll take me a day or 2 to get back to you.
Yeah.
If you want, if you want to be acknowledged right away, call my office. She'll answer the phone. She'll call you back immediately. I won't. I just have too much going on. I don't have the chance. I'm in a podcast. I'm doing something. So I think it's best for a company to run that way too. It's just eventually they get to that point where it's self-sufficient. And I think that's where everybody wants to be.
I think it would be important to mention, like we're not the smartest in the world. Like we didn't figure all this stuff out. Like Amy and I have consistently, and I know you guys do this too, consistently invested in being in rooms, being in conversations like this, where we can learn something from someone else who has gone before us. And so like the reason that we are where we are, number one, we've got, 10 plus years in a previous business where we did everything wrong. Since then we've kind of humbled ourselves and started to ask people and get in rooms where we can, find out the answers to things. Yeah. And so, we just continue to invest in ourselves because like we're our number one asset. Right. And so, we didn't figure all this stuff out. It's the books we've read, the rooms we've been in, the podcasts we listen to, like this one here, where we've picked up something and put it into practice inside of our business. which is why we feel called to impact the decking industry, which is why we created the Legacy Decks Academy, is because I literally don't have a job inside of the business anymore. Customers don't know my name. And so
Nobody has his personal number.
That would be
yeah,
nice.
I actually had our last quarterly meeting with my team. I met 2 or 3 people on my team that I'd never met before. I didn't hire them. I didn't interview them. I wasn't part of the process. So that was pretty cool. But so the reason that the Academy exists, number one, is to give us something to do. But number 2, we really want to impact that industry. Like, we want to help other deck builders, other people in the outdoor living profession, and some contractors, some ancillary people too that we work with, to create the systems, create the team, figure out how to put it all together so that they don't, they're not hustling themselves to death like we have been in the past.
It's an industry that needs it for sure.
Yeah.
When I first got on Instagram a few years ago, I saw like the contractor relations in there, and I loved it. I thought it was the coolest thing to see how everybody was helping each other through like
They really do.
like modern craftsmen and all those guys like that. It was so insane to see that. But then like you come to South Carolina, and especially in the Myrtle Beach area, and there was none of that.
Yeah.
There was no like guys helping,
Camaraderie, brotherhood,
and everybody's trying to hide their price or hide their tip, and they don't want to show how they do that. And it's like, why not?
Yeah.
Like, we can help each other grow. It's not like you're feeding your competition. You're just helping people. So.
Yeah. Oh no, you raised the whole industry.
Yeah, if I build up my competition, that helps raise my clientele.
Yep. Your
Who
pricing.
expect something better than what the side hustle guys are doing out
For sure.
there.
Yeah.
And so then they understand the difference between what we build versus what they build.
Yeah, that's
Helps
awesome.
bring value.
I think that's a great
100%.
thing that you guys do that, because that's something I've always like idolized to see, is like just being able to build this industry, because it's lacking so much.
Yeah.
And we've got this generation that's coming past the craftsmen and starting to look at the business side of it.
Right.
And that matters so much.
Yep. Yep.
So how is it looking at it from a bird's eye view? So I know you do a lot. You're in a lot of rooms. I'm sure you got tons of mentors or have had tons of mentors through this time. And then now to be able to flip that script, and now you're kind of like doing your own Legacy Academy and coaching guys. Like, what kind of sense of accomplishment does that give you? Like, is it like, do you ever step back and like, holy smokes, wow, look at this?
Yeah. We were just at an event where we had some of our members there, and they were able to share, and I heard them share with other people the growth that they've had, the wins that they're having. So for me, the biggest sense of accomplishment is to like look at, like, to see where they came from and actually see practical, actual results, tangible results inside of their life, and not just inside of their business. Cause that's, we impact them across the board, like inside of their relationships with their family, their wives, their body. Like, your body is the weapon that does everything in your world. Like, if you're not weaponized inside of your body, like, you're not going to create very much success inside of anything in your world. So for me, like, seeing people elevate, I sat across, this actually just came up. So we were having dinner with one of the members, and the wife said to me, she said, last time I saw you, I told you that, the version that of my husband that was sitting with us was totally different. She's like, I'm going to tell you today, he's even totally different than he was at that point when I told you that. That's so awesome. Like the continual growth that they're seeing, to have a wife say like, hey, thank you for what you've done to help my husband, which is helping my business, which is helping our family. Like, that's just huge. So huge. I don't know if you have anything like that, but.
Yeah, for me, I love possibility, lighting in somebody's eyes. Like, that's the coolest thing, working with our members, is to see them see something different. Yeah. One of our clients their company's been around for 52 years. Wow. You'd think, well, what they must know everything, and they don't, and they love learning new things, and they light up with like, oh my gosh, why didn't we think of that? That makes so much more sense than this difficult way we're doing things. And so I just love seeing the possibility in the eyes, and that creates confidence in them. And that emulates in their business. The clients that they're accepting, the jobs that they're doing when they're going out for bids, they're just more successful in that because they're more confident in who they are and who they are as a business and what they're doing and why they're doing it.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And
that's all kind of like, you can't really put your finger on it, right? It's a little bit fluffy, if you will. Like, let's talk practical results. Like, we had one member, they charged a 25% markup on their jobs. That's just what they charge. I said, why do you charge that? Well, it's what we've always charged. Well, why do you charge that? Like, they don't know how to calculate their overhead and their profit to figure out what they actually should be charging for a markup number. So we helped them negotiate a contract. This was not us. We just sat down and did the numbers. Like, hey, you should be charging 44% in order to take home 10% profit, to pay yourself what you need to pay you. they would have sold this contract for $700,000 less than what they should have. This is a big contract. This is like $2.4 million contract. And they would have charged just enough to cover like they would have literally just been churning money and covering overhead, not making any profit, not paying, actually possibly even costing themselves with that
Probably
big of a
costing.
gap. So we actually get down into the nitty gritty of like figuring all those things out with these people, because most contractors just don't know. Like they'll go around asking like, hey, what do you charge for markup? What do you charge for? It's totally irrelevant. What's your overhead? What's your profit desire? What are you paying yourself? Then we'll calculate your markup.
Guys that will just be like, oh, I just do cost plus 15%. I'm like, but what's your numbers? And then I have one main huge builder who is killing it, and he's like, dude, I'm at like 60%. If you're not making 60, he's like, there's no reason to do it. And then this guy said, oh, I do cost plus 15.
Right.
Well, you're totally wrong.
Yeah.
You might want to make some changes. you know?
So that gives us huge sense of accomplishment just for people to have just wins inside their personal life, inside of their bank accounts, like the whole 9 yards. So.
And now to like see like actual results is probably awesome.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So what's next for you guys? Like 5-10 year plan? Like I know you got one location that you said you're going to launch Q1. Like where do you see this thing in 5 years?
Yeah, so in 5 years I'll be 50, and my team knows like I'm gonna run hard for the next 5 years, and then just kind of look back and see where we're at, right? My goal would be for it to live on beyond us, right? Legacy, and well, possibly, yeah. I mean, it may be, but maybe not. I don't really know. Like my team at this point has got our team is really driving our growth more than we are right now. It's the goals that they want to achieve require the business to get bigger, and so I don't know how big it's going to get, right? We can look on paper, like we set a target to be a $20 million company, which, you know, whether you think that's big or not, whatever. But essentially, like personally, we'd like to have a house, a nice beach house somewhere down south, Florida area, still have what we've got going on down here from a personal side of things in the next 5 to 10 years. But ultimately just be able to like, we don't see ourselves retiring, right? Because like we do what we do because we enjoy doing it. Business is kind of our hobby. People say, "What are your hobbies?" Well, my family's my hobby. My business is my hobby. I do what I like to do, right? And I'm okay with that. And so I'd still love to be a part of it, but not as active inside of it as I am right now. Like on the coaching and consulting side of things, I don't want to be the guy that's got to run that whole thing or have all the answers, right? So I want to grow up other people. There's people on my team that want to become a part of the academy and actually teach, because they're growing underneath us right now, what we're teaching. And so I could see the academy getting to a place where it's servicing 100+ deck builders in the area, or in the market easily, if you will. And the beach house, and I don't know what other stuff we got.
Just
$20
so
million
more just
company,
like being free.
And we're just open. Like I don't want to be constrained by location or money or time. Like I want to be able to do life, do business wherever, whenever, and just that's life. So.
I love it.
Give generously, like a big thing. We are missional inside of what we do. Like our business, we didn't finish the story there, but like this is our mission, right? We do what we do right now because we're able to support and give generously. Like I get more excited about the fact that I've got a specific account inside of our business accounts where a certain percentage goes over there every dollar that comes in, and I can just give to whoever and whatever I want.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Whatever
that's
it
awesome.
can be. A vehicle, it could be, supporting missionaries. Like that's just what we do. So my goal is just to be able to continue to do that, because I'm not independently wealthy. So
I think that's important to like set aside a part of your revenue to give back, because it creates impact within your team. So now they have a purpose bigger than just a paycheck.
Absolutely.
And then also it kind of makes you hustle a little harder. Like if you're dedicating a certain amount of revenue, like, you have to make that up somewhere.
Yeah.
So I think that's huge in business. And when I joined the program, which, Nick Alfano, like one of his key things was like, hey, you're going to give. If you're going to sit at this top tier, you're going to give to an organization. I don't care what it is, but there's a percentage of revenue going there. And that's when we started doing that. And it's just been huge.
Yeah, so every week we do our profit transfers, is what we call them. It's a book called Profit First that teaches it. And we take it off the money before we spend the money. So it's when we do our percentage for charity, it doesn't have anything to do with profit, anything like that. It's off the top line number.
Yeah.
So, if we sell a $100,000 job, 2,000 goes right into our charity account.
Absolutely.
2,000 goes into savings. 1,000 into a tax account, things like that comes off the top, and the business has to run off of what we've said it has to run off of. So then, we're fiscally responsible to that. We're to that money. It's not ours. My kids always they have such a distorted view of money,
Yeah.
right? Because
It just grows on trees.
Yeah.
it does. And they'll see in the earlier days, checks coming through, deposits. You got a check for $20,000.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And I'm like, no,
19 of it is
mommy.
expenses.
Yeah, mommy did not get a check for $20,000.
I know that a lot.
Let's clarify this. But like, we're responsible to that, to our people, to the company, and where the business is going. And
sure.
so making sure that we're taking that off that top line and then giving the business what it needs to run, and then sticking inside of that.
That's a good
amazing.
thing for entrepreneurs.
And you
too,
kind of
profit
taught
first.
that in the field.
Yeah.
That field
Yeah.
thing. What was the name of the book again?
So specifically, the concept is Profit First by
Yeah.
Mike Michalowicz,
Yeah.
but there's Profit First for contractors. I've since learned there's Profit
Sean
First for
Van
real
Dyke.
estate investors, Profit First for landscape contractors. Like there's a lot of them out there, but essentially it's just a cash management system
Yeah.
where you force yourself to live off of what's left, right? So instead of most people, they make money, they spend money, and then whatever's left they hope is profit, right? Well, in this case, you're gonna make the money, set the profit aside, and then the business has to run off of what is left. And so it's just it's a forced way of you'll learn real quick whether or not you're charging the right price or not if your expense accounts gets too low.
Good
So,
with taxes and stuff too.
taxes,
Yeah.
like
I think
to be
those
able
are-
to stroke a check
surprises.
at the at the end of
not
the year or the
sweat.
quarter and
Well,
not
and the
sweat
rest
it.
of it
Yeah.
in the account is yours.
Yeah, and the rest is yours. Exactly.
I think that's something that most entrepreneurs in the starting stages need to learn. That's why I always tell friends that are going to open a business. I'm like, well, if there's anything I can tell you, get yourself on payroll and get off the self-employment tax, because I learned that the hard
Yeah.
way. At
That's
the
a
end of
big
the
bill.
first year, they were like, "You owe us $25,000." I was like,
Yeah.
"Where is that?" I was like, "I have like
Right.
2 in the bank," and they're like, "Doesn't matter. You owe us $25,000."
Yeah.
Thanks to that.
Right.
So I was
Yeah.
like, well, and then I started reading Profit First through Sean Van Dyke and started picking that up, and it just made it so much easier. And then at the end of the year, I'm cutting myself a check, and I'm not even worried about taxes. And then I get my tax
Yeah.
bill back, and it's like a quarter of what I actually have in my account.
aside,
So
yeah.
you don't
Yeah.
have to worry about it. And that's
Yeah.
the scariest thing. If you got to worry about tax issues, God bless you.
Yeah.
It probably allows you to maneuver different too, and allows you to make quick decisions on whether we're ready to scale or not.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Hiring and all that.
And
Absolutely. Yeah.
it-
The financial health of the company.
Gives you the cushion too if something goes wrong, a truck breaks down, anything like that. Like you have the fund there for it. One of the things, especially like when we went into COVID, and our team kind of was like, are we going to be okay? What's going to happen? All of that we were able to be like, hey, like, no, this is what we have in our savings. We know we have 6 months worth, of money to pay you guys for the essentials. We have 6 months of essentials in savings. We're good for 6 months. Like you guys just continue doing what you're doing and we'll just see how this plays out. But we know we have that cushion. And they were all like, oh, okay. And for us, that was a great place to be. It wasn't, we weren't freaking out like, oh my goodness, if we don't sell something, in the next 4 weeks, we're
in trouble.
doomed.
Yeah.
And that's just by little every week, putting that little bit of money in there. And you don't think it's a lot. And sometimes when we work with our members on it and get them started on it, they're doing like 1%, 1%, 1%, as they're getting used to doing this system and figuring out what their actual profit margins need to be and markup and all of that great stuff. But that little 1% week over week, it builds up. And then all of a sudden at the end of the,
It's still there.
6
'Cause you
months
didn't
and
touch
it's
it.
still there,
For sure.
and you're like, I got like 10 grand in the bank. Holy cow. I've never had 10 grand. I mean, that's one of, so being able to have that focus and that diligence to it, even if it's that 1% over time is huge.
Yep.
Simple, boring stuff, just
Yeah.
doing it consistently. Like that's the biggest thing.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely matters a lot. I mean, and like you said, it makes life and business less stressful, but that just translates into your personal life and your family life as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's what all entrepreneurs really struggle with is not being home enough, not seeing their family enough, not giving the time that they did because they're on the phone or on the computer and all those things. And we all deal with that. And I think that's something that that's why we kind of started this podcast, is to try and touch on those. How can we fix it? How can we better each other? How can we better the process so that we're not doing that?
Right.
So we're home when we're home.
Right. Well, and I'll challenge your listeners, because I challenge people when I talk to them about this, is like, are you actually taking advantage of the lifestyle that you got into business for in the first place?
Yeah.
Right. Because we all got into business because we wanted to have that lifestyle, the time freedom, the money freedom, right? Like, are you actually enjoying the lifestyle that you got into business for in the first place? Most of it, I found myself for a majority of my entrepreneurial career, I wasn't taking advantage of it. I wasn't taking the kids to school. I wasn't scheduling the family vacations. I wasn't, didn't have the money I wanted in my bank account. Like those are the reasons we got into business. Like if you're not taking advantage of those things that we got into business for, like, what's the point?
7
Might
years
as well
in,
work
I'd
a 9 to
take a nap
5.
when I'm ready. I'll tell you that.
Right. Take a nap when you're
Or
ready.
go to
Turn my
lunch.
phone
Like
off.
call your
Sorry.
wife and be like, hey, let's go to lunch today.
Yeah.
Because you can.
That's
Yeah,
one thing
absolutely.
I really appreciated about like trying to do different things and getting more focused and organized was like having a child and being able
Yeah.
to, be there.
Right.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, it might not matter to him and like he's not old enough to remember certain things, but like, sure hell matters to my girlfriend and,
Right.
and it
Yeah.
definitely matters to
Well, and
me.
it's habits you're creating now.
Yeah.
For sure.
So if you
Yeah,
create that
in
habit,
5
it's just a
years,
matter of,
it'll be
you
better.
you just do it.
It's
Yeah.
kind of like the money thing, right? The business has to survive off of the money that's left in your expense account. You almost have to block your important time slots first, and the business gets to operate in the time that's left.
Absolutely.
Right. So same kind of concept. So
Yeah, scheduling is a big thing. If you're, that time blocking stuff, if you really aren't doing that, you should look into it because you're just throwing yourself away. Or you're getting looped into doing something that you don't want to, or taking too long.
exactly.
Well, then your life turns chaotic, and then
Yeah.
once one thing turns chaotic, most things turn chaotic.
your team feels chaos.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
So thanks for tuning in. Like, subscribe, or follow us on CEO Hot Seat. We appreciate you guys coming out today. It was a pleasure meeting both of y'all.
Yeah. Thanks so much. We
Yeah.
appreciate
Thanks for
it.
having us.
Awesome.
Thank you, guys.